From SEGAbits, and today we have a special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name is Matt Herms. I'm a colorist for Archie Comics. I work on Sonic Mega Drive, Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Universe, Sonic Boom, Mega Man, just a lot of stuff.
How did you get started with the Sonic Archie Comics?
So years ago when I was in high school, I was just out of high school looking for something to draw, and I stumbled upon Sonic the Hedgehog fan comics, and in particular Other N, written by Ian Flynn. And I had contacted him, sent him portfolio pages essentially, and I was like, hey man, like I'd love to draw your comic. And at the time, you know, like I did a few pages of that, and very shortly thereafter he was like, all right, well, I'm no longer going to be doing this fan comic, you know, like, because I am now doing some stuff behind the scenes for Archie Sonic, you know, like, and about a year or two after that, I like went to him and I was like, hey man, like I'm going to submit my portfolio, you know, like it would be amazing if I could get like a letter of recommendation or something, and he did that for me, you know, like, and sure enough, editor liked my stuff, said it was unpublishable, but you know, like they worked with me for about a year and got me up to speed so that I could do my first issue penciling, which was Sonic the Hedgehog number 185, almost 10 years ago now.
Thank you very much. Here's our next question. How does it feel to work for a popular multimedia franchise like Sonic the Hedgehog?
It is surreal at times, you know. Like, so this is something I grew up with. Like, I grew up reading the comic books themselves. Like, my first issue was like number 2. So it's very surreal and exciting to be getting to participate in a book like this. You know, like something that is essentially a legacy from my childhood. You know, like and for so many of us, in fact, it's really exciting.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, quick question.
Yes.
Have any other franchises influenced the Sonic comics? Like, for example, any movies or cartoons, other comics or anime or anything like that?
Sure. So, oh gosh, like, I'm sure there's some stuff that has influenced it over time. You know, like for me, you know, like I do a lot of coloring nowadays, so I'm out of that sphere essentially. But gosh, I know like when I was growing up, there was all sorts of Star Wars references, Star Trek references. There were these great like mock-up covers of the Sonic the Hedgehog Freedom Fighters as like the Fantastic Four and stuff like that.
All right, thank you. Mm-hmm. Now here's a question. Has the UK-based Sonic the Comics series influenced the Sonic Archie comics in any sort of way?
I actually don't know. I know at one time I think a couple characters got drawn in as a cameo, but other than that I'm not totally sure. I've actually not gotten to read a lot of Sonic the Comic. I've always wanted to. You know, like I admire a lot of the artwork from that book because that stuff, they did a lot of traditional coloring, like they did a lot of hand painting and stuff like that. And it is breathtaking to look at. If you've ever looked up like the raw artwork from like Richard Elson or somebody like that, it is amazing looking.
All right, thank you so much. What is the process to making new characters and new stories? Is it a bunch of individuals as a group coming up with ideas, or is it mostly Ian's idea?
So typically, as I understand it, it's typically a little bit of both. Like our writer Ian and our editors, like they'll talk about ideas and stuff, and often Ian will have like kind of an idea, a rough concept of like what the character looks like, and he'll give that to one of our artists, and they'll go ahead and refine that into what it will ultimately look like in the book. And usually it comes to me and it's already got a color scheme. Sometimes it comes to me and I'm like, all right, I get to make this up as I go. So,
okay. Here's an interesting one. Do the artists influence the writers in any way? Like, do the artists put in their input for like plot ideas or dialogue or something like that?
Sure. I'm not sure about precisely that, but I know that Ian, as a writer, has often tried to write towards whatever artist's strengths are. You know, like a guy like Tracy. Like honestly, I've seen Tracy be handed some crazy stuff and he knocks it out of the park every time, you know, like other artists handle more quieter character building kind of moments much better. Some artists excel at group shots, you know, like stuff like that. So I know that at least for sure in that way, the influence comes in kind of writing towards an artist's strengths, you know, like to get just the best possible looking book, you know.
All right. Now here's a slightly more personal one.
Sure.
What is Patrick Spaz doing these days? Does he have any influence on the comics or anything like that?
Patrick. So okay. Years ago, I actually got to color my first Patrick cover. I think it was an issue of Mega Man. You know, like that he had drawn the cover for, and I got to color it, and it was such a surreal moment for me because like Patrick's one of the guys that I grew up, you know, like admiring his artwork and all that, and I think like finally I colored like Sonic Universe 50 was like this awesome looking metal Sonic with like a background from like the Sonic OVA, and it was just beautiful looking, and I got to color that, and I remember getting an email back from him that was like, you know, like, hey Matt, like, really love these colors, and I was like, oh my god, like, it was like that, like, Senpai noticed me kind of joke, you know,
yes.
Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, he has seen me, he has talked to me, you know, like, Patrick's a really cool guy. He's still, I mean, like, he's still keeping busy, you know, like, he does a lot of work on children's books and stuff, you know, like, he does, like, a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated like storybooks and stuff like that, and he's still doing covers to this day. So, and every now and again, when they can get him to do an interior book, you know, like it's always very fun. Like it's always like, all right, like we got Patrick, it's gonna be awesome. You know.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any comments on the Sonic Mega Drive arc going on right now?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so Sonic Mega Drive, I'm actually doing the coloring for it. Working with Tyson Hess, who, again, like in kind of a way of like a writer writing to someone's strengths, like Tyson handles action and comedy with just amazing talent. And that book is both. Like it's super action and it's hilarious, you know, like the kind of reactions, the kind of like face expressions that Tyson can do. You know, like I'm always chuckling as I color this book. It's so fun. And so I'm super excited for it. I hope it continues. The next one comes out on November 2nd, I want to say. Sonic Mega Drive, the next level. We've got some Metal Sonic in there. That's going to look awesome. And you know, I'm hoping that it continues because it's very fun. So.
All right. What is your opinion on the Sonic Boom spin-off series? Were the writers and artists disappointed they had to close the comics down prematurely?
Yeah, so I colored Sonic Boom as well, and we were all disappointed when the book got canceled there, but like I think we're all really hopeful that it will come back at some point. You know, like I think season 2 of the TV show's coming out soon. I think the 3DS game came out recently.
Yeah, Sonic Boom
Fire and Ice. Yeah, so I have no idea how that was received, but like,
yeah, I heard it had decent scores.
Yeah,
I don't know personally myself, but
okay, cool. So like I think like Sonic Boom, the comic book itself, and honestly the cartoons still to some degree, reminds me a lot of the comics that I grew up reading, which was like the Sonic gag strips, basically.
Yeah.
It was basically like kind of like a classic Archie book, but just with Sonic characters. I would love to see it continue. Like I think at one time they had talked about online, you know, like maybe doing it in like a digest or something. Always hopeful that it'll come back. I know we all miss it and would love to keep doing it. So, but we'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
Now this is a slightly controversial topic, but what is your opinion on Sega's restrictions on the Sonic universe? Do you find it a restriction or a personal challenge?
Okay.
Also, if there was none of those restrictions, would you change anything?
Oh gosh. I'm not sure if I would change anything necessarily. So for me, like where I'm coming from, I do all the coloring and all that. So like for me, it's kind of a fun challenge working on any licensed book, truth be told, to be able to translate like that 16-bit artwork or that Sonic Adventure era artwork to a comic book page. You know, like I find, you know, like that that the artists, they'll give me some great like line art renditions of it, and then it's like, all right, like let me figure out how to get that kind of aesthetic essentially from that 16-bit and put it into 2D. You know, like when the vibrancy of Chemical Plant Zone doesn't quite come into print because you know you just can't print purples really well. You know, so for me, like I enjoy working through the whole like aesthetic of the licensed stuff. You know, like I like the challenge of it. You know, like it's only restrictive, at least on my end, in that you know, like I need to make it look as a certain thing. You know, like I need to make it look just right. But I like doing it. So you know, like for me, I enjoy it. So.
All right. All right. Here's another one, not necessarily Sonic related, but more in general.
Sure.
Do you have a personal history with Sega? For example, have you played their various video games or played on their consoles or just stuff like that?
I have. Okay, so confession time. I was more of a Nintendo kid growing up. Yeah. Dun dun dun. I had a Sega Genesis. Sonic 2 was actually my first Sonic the Hedgehog game. And I would play different, I know, right? I would play different Sega games here and there, but like I was always much more of a Nintendo guy. When like post Dreamcast, it was like, oh, Sonic's now on everything. I was like, oh, thank goodness, you know, like I can get my Sonic fix everywhere. But you know, like I have found that in my adulthood, I've had much more of oh, I'd like to go back and experience some of these games kind of deal.
So kind of like an appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. So like in my adulthood, like I collect retro video games. So like you know, I started out being like, all right, my NES, my Super Nintendo, all that kind of stuff that I had as a kid, and I was like, hey, like here are a bunch of games that I never got to play as a kid, like Sparkster, like Rocket Knight Adventures, you know, like you know, like the Ghostbusters on Sega Genesis is amazing. You know,
I heard
like,
positive things about
oh yeah,
that.
no, it's fantastic. Like they're like chibi style with like these giant heads based on the actors.
But it's like solid platform.
Oh yeah, it's a solid platform shooter basically. Like it's like Mega Man essentially. You know,
okay.
like yeah. So it's super cute, super fun. But I mean, like, so I'm kind of going back now in adulthood, going back and looking at stuff. You know, like the Power Rangers movie game on Sega Genesis is fantastic. Like, so it's kind of like the Power Rangers movie game on Super Nintendo is just generic, beat 'em up. That one is straight up like, you know, like, hey, here's the lore. We're gonna have like flashback missions where it's like got the original teenagers from the thing, you know, like it's super neat, you know, like it's not something that you can experience anywhere other than Sega Genesis.
Okay. So. All right, here's another Sega related one. If you could adapt any franchise from Sega into a new comic series, what would it be and why? Like it could be anything from like Streets of Rage, Shinobi, Virtua Fighter, Puyo Puyo, Jet Set Radio, Skies of Arcadia, etc., etc.
Sure. So I know Ian's answer is Skies of Arcadia.
Oh yeah.
You know, like for me, I also read the Knights comic when I was a kid, and I would love to see that come back in some way, like just kind of like a little mini series or something like that. That's like, hey, we're going back to this because I thought like, you know, like visually it's very
inconsistent, I guess you could say.
Well, I mean, like the original comic book, I guess, but like visually, like the games and everything are just very surreal. And I think that nowadays, like what you can do with digital coloring and all that, I think that'd be super fun.
Especially with the concept of dreams, because you can pretty much get away with anything.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Before we go, do you have any final comments?
Thank you for, you know, interviewing me, and please check out my work. I have a website. It's www.mattherms.com, and you can find all the stuff about my coloring and previous illustration work and all that kind of stuff right there. So, yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, thank you very much,
Yeah, thank you.
Matt. This is Seth, also known as FlareHabanero on SEGAbits. I'm signing off.